Welcome to the space between two lines. I'm Alex Saunders, and this is a space for real, honest conversations about fertility, pregnancy loss, and the journey to parenthood. Here, we hear the stories of people navigating the highs, the lows, and everything in between. A place to feel seen, understood, and less alone. Because every story matters, and so does yours. Today's guest is Sarah, whose fertility journey is anything but ordinary. After 17 IVF transfers, she welcomed 4 babies through sheer resilience and determination. Then, more than 5 years later, at age 40, came a completely unexpected natural pregnancy, one that was initially met with fear and uncertainty. Sarah shares the emotional complexity of almost not continuing with the pregnancy and the joy that followed in welcoming her 5th child, now thriving 1-year-old. Her story is raw, powerful, and a reminder of just how unpredictable this path can be. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Did you want to start by introducing yourself to our audience and just telling us a little bit about what your life looks like at the moment?
Yes, so my name's Sarah. I'm a mum to 5 children. So the first 4 were IVF. The 5th was a very big surprise baby. So my eldest, Ted, is 12, nearly 13. And then I've got Clementine, who's 11, Billy, who's 9, Ollie Rose, who's 6, and Ronnie is 1. And so my life is very mom-centric at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I want to take you back to the very beginning. So when you first decided that you wanted to grow your family and you wanted to become a mum, what did things look like for you at that time? And what were your ideas around conception and what it might look like for you?
So it feels like a world ago, like Ted being nearly 13, and we started 2 years before he was even born trying. So we got married when I was only 26, and we just wanted to have children pretty much within the first year or 2 of getting married. We were both pretty eager to have kids. My husband's a bit older than me, only 4 years, so he would have been 30 when we got married. So I didn't have a period. I had polycystic ovaries and hadn't had a period for years, and knew I'd probably need to go on an ovulation drug. So I went and saw this doctor in Melbourne that a friend had referred me to. Nick and I went in together, and I explained to him like how I didn't have a period. We wanted to have children soon, knowing it would probably be a bit hard. We went in, thought we were getting ahead of the game. He said to me, yeah, that's fine. We can give you ovulation drugs and you'll probably be able to conceive pretty quickly. You're young and everything. But we need to check your husband. We need to check Nick. And so he had to do a sperm test. He was horrified by it. Like, just wasn't what we were expecting. And we were like, oh, silly that we even have to do this. We then went in for the results like a week or 2 later. And he was just like, no, Nick has very low sperm count. His motility is bad. You're going to have to go to IVF. And that was like the world falls out from beneath you. We were both just so shocked. Because we just knew we'd have to do some form of fertility treatment, but we never considered it with the IVF. And I was 26, he was 30. We felt so young and like almost invincible. So that was a huge shock. Being the sort of people we are, I was just like, right, this is it. We're going to just get into it. We're going to start straight away. So I reckon we probably started like 8 weeks later. Just got straight into it.
Yeah. Did the fertility doctor say that in terms of Nick's sperm, like age mattered or wouldn't have really mattered when you started IVF?
Nah, it wouldn't have mattered. Not when it came to his sperm. They did say that my age was obviously really probably the critical part. So if we wanted to start at 26, you're going to increase your chances essentially. But it was so unspoken about back then.
Imagine.
I remember I spoke to my boss about it, and she, like, I'll never forget her reply. And she was it was a very female place I worked. She was really pro moms, pro working moms. And I remember her just saying to me, because I was 26, she was like, well, at least you're 26. I've got these friends who are like in their late 30s going through it. So you don't even know the start of it. And I was just like, and I remember feeling really stupid and being like, why do I feel like this? Like I'm being a brat. But now I look back and I'm like, she just had no idea. She'd have 4 children. She'd been pregnant so easily. And it really made it feel small and pathetic compared to like what her friends were going through. And so anyway, I felt pretty alone. I knew nobody that had been through IVF, like being 26, that's very young.
Yeah.
Our friends hadn't had kids even. So then a lot of them went on to have infertility issues and had to do IVF, but they would come to us and be like, oh God, can you tell us about it? And we made them feel normal. We didn't have anyone to help us feel normal. So I remember looking specifically for like support groups and there was nothing. There wasn't even like online forums. There was nobody to talk to.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd been so hard.
It was. Yeah.
So processing that information and then moving into your first cycle, I assume would have been quite scary.
We were just so excited. We were saying so naive. I just was like, I'm young, he's young. You know, they are saying we've got really good chances. I just thought we would go in, do a cycle, boom, pregnant. And that was not the case. So I don't remember, because it's so long ago, I don't remember the specifics of like drugs I went on even. Like I always think I blocked it out a little bit. But all I know is it went on to be, so our first baby took 10 transfers. So it was 5 fresh cycles. And every cycle, because I had polycystic ovaries, so I would produce, they'd put me on lowest dose to encourage IVF growth, and I would get between 40 and 50 eggs.
Wow.
Every time they went in and took them.
That would lean so hard on your body.
Well, and then, so what happens if you produce that many eggs is inevitably you then have height stimulation. So I'd end up in hospital afterwards because I would like blow up. And so it was always like this, just the eggs were a good thing. They were always like, oh my God, you have so many eggs. And I was like, that's not going to end well for me.
Yeah.
And the more times we did it, the more familiar I was with the symptoms of hyperstimulation.
Yeah.
Ended up passing out numerous times in hospital foyers and just like dehydration. So that was full on. My body was definitely, it went for a rough time.
Do you remember how many actual embryos you were getting roughly with?
So it was always like 2 or 3, but we established that I didn't, so a frozen cycle were just pointless. So we were wasting embryos because they would put me on the pill because I never had periods. So they'd put me on the pill to get me to have like a cycle. And then they'd just like put an embryo in and put me on progesterone. But I would bleed within 2 days because my hormones were just not where they needed to be. So then eventually they figured out, and we were just like, I felt like we were wasting embryos on these. And so I think the more you do it, you take control.
Yeah.
And so I would say to our doctor, we're not doing any more frozen. We would have the embryos sitting there. So they would do a stimulated cycle, but a very low dose, just to get me to produce 1-2 follicles. And then they'd give me a trigger. So essentially I was doing another fresh cycle, but without the egg collection. And that was the only way they could get my hormones to the right level. So we would get like 2 to 3 embryos. They would, like the frozen ones were pointless. They were just wasted. And I kind of started to see it like a bit of just, it became like a science experiment. It's just like playing with my hormone levels at different points and then getting it right. So then our last fresh cycle, we got about 7. So they got it much, we'd really like finessed the concoction of what I needed to get healthy eggs, not just like 42. I don't know if they were that healthy. When you get
many ink when, with polycystic, it's like, yes, you get a lot of eggs, but they might not be mature or of the right quality. Exactly half the issue.
Yeah. So we got to a good point. And then, we did have 1 chemical pregnancy in amongst those first 10. That was horrendous. I think that was probably the second one. And that was probably the hardest one, I reckon, that like to come back from.
Yeah.
I think just seeing a positive and then like bleeding literally like 5 minutes after I got that positive.
Okay. Yeah.
And just being so shocked and then waiting and then having to have a DNC. And then they went on to do a laparoscopy just to check I didn't have any endo. That first year was probably the worst because it was just testing and it was just experimenting essentially. We were doing a lot of acupuncture and seeing a natural, like a Chinese doctor as well. And I remember they put us on this like a detox to detox us of like the metals in our body. And that was probably like a year into it. And all that happened was we were like not pregnant and miserable. And then we were hungry and couldn't have a glass of wine, couldn't have chocolate. So we just like lost weight, miserable. And I remember after that just saying to my husband, like, and then it continued to fail. Yes, like this is not what we need to be doing. We just need to try not stop our lives. We're stopping our lives for this. So yeah, we eventually got a positive after 10 transfers. So that was a lot.
Yeah. How did you keep moving through cycle after cycle? So it took a year of IVF to fall pregnant. 2 years of IVF to fall pregnant. That is a long time to, and I mean, as you've spoken about, like it's also consuming and you start going down these rabbit holes of all the things you shouldn't be doing and you change your entire life. And that just impacts everything. And then to just be having like, negative time after time, like how did you move through? How were you coping throughout that?
So we definitely were like such a team, the two of us, because it's almost like no one got it. People would be like, oh, you can always try again, but it was just like us in our own little private hell. That's how it felt. It was just like the amount we cried in those 2 years. I've really blocked so much of that time out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I say those 2 years, but it did continue on because even after we had Ted, we went on to continue trying for more children. And there was always some fails in amongst those as well. But it didn't feel it still hurt, but it wasn't as bad when we had one. Like I knew what to expect a bit more. But yeah, it was a shock. It was not a nice time. We had holidays we had to cancel. There was weddings we didn't get to go to. Like I remember injecting into my tummy in the toilets at various wedding receptions because we're in that real cool wedding season of our lives. And it was just like him and I against the world.
Yeah.
We had really supportive families, but no infertility in amongst our families. So they didn't get it. Yeah. Supported us, but like you just don't get it unless you've been through it.
And there's so many layers and elements to IVF. It's not just like, oh yeah, you'll try again. There's so much waiting and stress that you go through with each step, and even just the medications to the embryos to does it work, like your 2-week wait. There's just so much involved in it. And it's just one of those things that you never fully understand.
Someone said to me the other day, because I was talking about the 2-week wait being horrendous, and they said to me, even when it's not IVF and you're in the 2-week wait, when you're just having a natural conception, it's horrendous. I was like, sorry, but no, you just can't compare. Like, you cannot compare because you haven't invested all this money. Like literally it's probably not your first month of trying. You're probably like, months, if not years into this. Yeah, so much weighs on it and it's not the same weight.
No, yes, I sure said. And I assume back then they probably didn't have rebates on IVF like they do now.
So there was a rebate, but like every cycle, like the fresh cycles, I reckon were like 3 or 4 grand out of pocket.
Yeah.
And the frozen would have been 2 grand, or maybe it was more than that. I've blocked so much out. Like you really do. I can't remember so much of it. I think that's just like protective isms.
Yeah. And of course, like every dollar is worth it when you get that end result, but when you're living it and like not only are you going through so much mentally, also financially, there's just so much pressure. And I can't imagine doing that for 2 years.
And I do think like, I feel a bit sad that late 20s time when you should be having fun, like I was just in the dark hole.
Yeah.
And we had so many people around us start falling pregnant. And that, I would almost say that was the worst part of it, was you just watch people just like fall pregnant easily, naturally. And then the ones that knew we were going through it would like approach me very carefully. And like, it didn't matter how you told me, if you were sensitive to it, if you didn't know and you just went in it, it still felt like shit. I remember like the world would start spinning.
Yeah.
And I would just need to be not where I was. Like they were some of the worst times, I reckon.
It just, so unfair. And it's so hard to not be feeling like that. You're so happy for the people around you, but it's also like, this is just shit. It's just so unfair. That why is this happening to us?
So shit. And you know what? We had been like those people that like, I don't feel that we faced much adversity. It was almost like the first thing that just not gone our way. I mean, not, little things had not gone our way, but we'd been so lucky and privileged in our lives. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't, you just have to go with it.
Yeah.
And then you do eventually get there. But I remember reading Jessica Rowe, I think it was. She went through IVF and someone said to me, you've got to read this article that Jessica Rowe's written. It will make you feel better. And so she'd written about having to go through 10 IVF transfers to get her child, her first child. Yeah. And we were probably only on like the third. I think it was probably my mum said to me, read it. And I said to my mum after, that's made me feel so much worse. So I don't want to hear about people who've had 10 cycles. I want to hear about the people that have had 1 cycle or 2 cycles. And people think you want to hear these miracle stories where you've been through, 20 IVFs and then you've got the baby. But like when you're going through IVF, you don't want to hear those stories.
No.
So I'm picking not the best story for you.
No, I remember similar, like we had been trying for our second baby for over a year and a half, I think. And I was about to start IVF. And like someone said to me, yeah, you just need to expect that it's going to take at least 2 years. It broke me.
It does.
I have just started bawling because I was just like, I think you have so much hope around IVF too, especially before you've started it. You can be quite ignorant to the, okay, IVF is like, that's going to fix everything.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case, but I remember her telling me that and it was not what I needed at that time. And that didn't happen for us, luckily. But I mean, yeah, it is the case for a lot of people, but I was just like, I did not need to hear that.
And you watch people around you, they start IVF, they're hopeful, and that is us. And then you just become more and more deflated and it gets like, you become almost like quite a negative person. And anyone that tries to give you advice, you're like, do you know, like, I don't even want to hear. You have no idea what this is like.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's complex. It's scientific. And that was how we ended up seeing it. I was just like, we've got to just cut the crap here. It's not about us relaxing. It's not about any of that. It's about then getting it right, And I'm not going to let anybody almost like gaslight me into believing like, relax, go and get more furniture, go in a detox.
Like, don't drink,
It's not that.
Yes. Obviously, you were doing round after round and it wasn't successful. Was there any point that they gave you an answer as to why they weren't sticking? Or was it just, again, as we said, more?
No, we should probably the hard part, which is why they did like the laparoscopy where they went in and looked more into like my ovaries and my uterus. And because there was no answers, and that was what was so hard. It's just unexplained almost, other than the low sperm and my PCOS, those 2 things combined, they were just like, it's just going to be a long slog. But then at the beginning, they were like, this will be quick and easy. And so then it was like slowly, it was like, maybe not that quick and easy, maybe a little bit more time. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of time. You got to stick with it. It was like goalposts kept changing. Yeah. But we did get there.
Do you want to talk me through what that felt like and how that pregnancy was for you? Were you optimistic? Were you anxious?
I was a mess. Like it was quite magical because it was what we wanted. Like we felt in a bit of a bubble still, the 2 of us, but so anxious, like really anxious. So there's a few weird things I would do, and I still do. So I can only wear black underwear because I don't want to see if I'm spotting. So I would not wear anything that I could see any hint of spotting. Wouldn't wipe, like once wiped, I wouldn't lower. I just was like on edge. I was a mess for most of that pregnancy. I don't think I relaxed at all, which in fact, I definitely didn't relax. Yeah, I just sat like literally in fear of losing. And I did have bleed when I would have been, I reckon, like 13, 14 weeks pregnant. And we were away in Yarrawonga, like in the middle of nowhere. And it was Christmas time and I had a bleed and my husband was out on his bike. And so he wasn't even contactable. And I remember my mum taking me to this like little medical center and they did a scan and we saw a heartbeat. And that probably was only one of the 3rd or 4th times we'd seen a heartbeat. But that was just like continued the fear,
Yeah.
It was just a fear-driven pregnancy, that one. And then he ended up coming 5 weeks early. There was issues with just like I went into early labor, placenta. The placenta was okay, but my umbilical cord was really short. That was a bit dramatic. And so quite relieved to, because he went into NICU and all of that. And so to actually have him home, it was like huge relief.
Yeah, but just another layer to like everything you've been through, and that on top of it just added so much more stress.
Well, and then knowing like we wanted another baby and we just assumed it would take another 2 years.
Yeah.
And so kind of like we enjoyed him, but we were also like, God, we've got to do that again. So that kind of lingered a bit. And so we got back to trying IVF. I only breastfed him for 9 months. I would have breastfed him for longer, but we wanted to get going because we were like, what if it takes 2 years again? We want to have a few kids.
Yeah.
We had a failed, again, they tried another frozen because they're like, you've been pregnant now, your body will find it easier to fall pregnant.
Okay.
So they did this frozen. And I remember saying to them before they put the embryo in, it's not going to work. I don't feel hormonal enough. And I knew so well then. I was like, I know when I'm almost like ripe and when I'm not. And I'm not. And they did it anyway. And I remember saying to the doctor after, like, I told you that wasn't going to work. I would bleed in 2 days.
When they were putting you on the pill, were they doing a scan in the lead up to
Yeah, they made sure my line is sticking out. I was not feeling hormonal. And you feel quite hormonal when they're about to put, when you've been on through the IVF drugs, like a proper fresh cycle. Yes. The hormones are really heightened. And I would know when I was right, just because we'd done it so much. And that was actually how I knew I was pregnant with the first one, with Ted, because that was a fresh cycle transfer. And the pregnancy hormone will encourage hyperstimulation. So I remember like it was 5 or 6 days post the implant, like they put him in, and I started to get really bloated, like hyperstimulation symptoms.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I reckon I'm pregnant, because I'd never had that at that later point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my God, this is definitely. So I just had a feeling because of that. So I kind of knew, and I just knew. I knew when I was hormonal enough, I knew when I wasn't. And I just got very good at calling the shots.
Yeah, self-affirmation. So when you did start the process for baby number 2, so you had one frozen failed.
Yeah.
Did you have embryos waiting on ice ready to go?
Yeah. So this is the magical thing about them is like the 4 kids, they're essentially what you would call like quadruplets, because they were all conceived on that same day. So they're the same batch. Yeah, that was good. I never thought of it like that until just recently, and someone said it to me, and I was like, well, yeah, they would be kind of like born over the space of they were only 6 years. The 4 of them were all done within 6 years. But it's quite weird when I look at them now and I'm like, you could be any way. Like the youngest could be the eldest. We would put 2 in with the first couple of like the Ted pregnancy and the Clementine pregnancy, the 1 and 2, we put 2 embryos in. And so I was like, they can being put in together. And so there's all these scenarios that they could have come about, and that's quite weird to get your head around.
Yeah, for sure. It's even just such a weird concept. Like I know that I've got embryos on ice, and just knowing that they're there and like what you're going to do with them and that they're baby, like it's just a weird, I know that
you're like, that's a whole nother conversation, because we then had to deal with that. So that decision. Yeah. And we decided we had 1 left. This is after we had the 4. Yes. Okay. And we had this 1 embryo, and he had 4 children. And my husband and I, we didn't want a 5th child. We were like, we are so complete, but this could have been them. Yeah. Like this could have been any of them, because all of those embryos were the same quality. And so it was just luck of the draw of who got picked. And I was like, we're putting 1 in the bin, or because we decided we couldn't donate it. It just didn't feel right. Yeah. More for them, I think, than for us. Like, then you had a sibling out there, yeah, a bit strange. That was a whole year of grief I felt towards that embryo and discarding it. I really struggled with that more than I thought I would. My husband didn't. He's very pragmatic. He's like, it's a bunch of cells. It's not a person. And I was like, no, I don't know how you can see it like that. Yeah. Because they were with that embryo. They were sat together for a while, and now they could have been one of them. So I found that really hard.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
All right. So did you want to talk us through when you found out you were pregnant with your second baby, how that transfers that took?
So that was a frozen one. And then I'm pretty sure that was then just a fresh. Okay. Like not a fresh, but like a stimulated cycle. Yes. So doing all the injections, or it could have been 2 frozens. I can't remember. Like everything is so blurry. And I remember thinking at the time, I should write this down. Yeah. But I didn't. I'm pretty sure it was 1 frozen and then a stimulated, and then she worked. Yeah. That pregnancy was it was a really bizarre one, because I don't think I'd come to terms with the stress of the whole past like 3.5 years of when we started trying to getting pregnant with Ted, to having him as a preemie, then very quickly trying for the second, getting pregnant a bit quicker than we thought. And I remember about 6 months pregnant, I just went into full-blown perinatal anxiety. Okay. And I was like probably as anxious as I've ever felt. And like all this came out of nowhere. And I look back and it probably was a lot to do with just my personality is like, just go hell for leather to get it done. I think I probably properly processed what we were going through and stuff. So I got quite anxious with her, ended up going on the medication because I felt so not myself. I was going to have 2 babies under 16 months old. I was back at work. And I think that was probably having babies too close together. I've been too pregnant too quickly and hadn't recovered. And so my back went, couldn't walk. Yeah, Ted had to have an operation. He was only like 15 months old, ended up in hospital just with an operation that had gone wrong. And, it's just like bubbling and it just peaked.
So you weren't necessarily anxious about the pregnancy and the way that was going to go. It was probably like everything. It was everything that you're going to be a male of too soon and all these things going on in your life. A lot of the time, the build up of everything you've been through. Yeah. It's just,
It's quite funny now, the irony now. But I think we were, Ted, the first one, we were so in control. And like in the 6 weeks, he just slept through. We just had a really comfortable little existence, the 3 of us. And I had this sudden moment of, oh my God, this baby's going to come and like turn us on our ass, here. And now I look at that and I'm like, I cannot believe I was worried because my life right now, unbelievably on its ass.
yeah.
I had no order to it at all. But that felt really like big. Yeah. To like go from our little threesome to this other little baby coming in. But as soon as she arrived, I feel like I properly just embraced full motherhood. I stopped work then because my husband was really busy with his work. We had 2 in 18 months. Yeah. And it was full on. Yeah. And so I probably started to really enjoy it though after her, from me being on the right medications,
Yeah. And probably not so much pressure like after the first one, you've got to do IVF again. So you're probably feeling that way. And it hasn't happened fast. So you're probably like, okay, I don't have to put that pressure on myself right now. We can think.
Absolutely. And I felt probably more confident because we always knew we wanted 3 children at least. I felt more confident that when we went for the 3rd, it probably wouldn't be a 2-year process. And they say once your body's been pregnant, often like in that for us, being pregnant with an IVF, going back pretty quickly, like the body knows what it's doing a bit better. Obviously not for you, that isn't the case. Yeah, for us, I probably did feel a bit less fearful. And we had 2. And I was like, we've got 2 now. If we couldn't have any more, I've got a sibling. And they've got a sibling each. And I probably felt a bit calmer about everything. Yeah.
Makes sense. So then how many IVF transfers had you done at that point for 2 babies?
Oh, like 30. Yeah, 30. Wow. Yeah, okay. And then at what point were you like, all right, we're ready to start again? So I think my husband was the one.
Okay.
Because I felt anxious with the second pregnancy. I was a bit more nervous. I didn't want to feel like that again. So he was more like, let's go for the 3rd. We were really enjoying the babies and the toddlers, like really enjoying that phase. And he's like, let's just go for the 3rd. And so she would have been 18 months old though. No, younger than that. Maybe like 15 months old. And I, again, took her off the boob and we pretty much started trying immediately. I didn't ever get a period in between any of them because I still wasn't getting cycles. They wanted to try it frozen again. We tried frozen. We did. And he was like, come on, this is working for you now. Yeah. And again, I was like, it's just not going to work. Anyway, we did it. It didn't work. I had to do a stimulated cycle and it worked. So we then just knew that was what we had to do. That pregnancy was much more chilled. Like I don't know, I knew what I was doing. I also had 2 very little babies, like a 1 and a 2-year-old. So the 3rd was born. They were 2 and 3, Mammy and Ted. So that was probably our most chaotic time of having the kids. And that's a question I get asked so much. Like, what was the hardest leap? Yeah. It was the 2 to 3, but it was probably because he was a reflux baby. So he cried for a year. And it was just like a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a screaming newborn. Yeah. That was really full on. And at that point, my husband was like, we're done, 3 children. But then I was like, no, we're not. So when Bill was about 18 months, we were going through back and forth conversations of like, I want a 4th. He's like, I do not want a 4th. Yeah. I was like, I really want a 4th. And he was like, really don't want a 4th. And so then I was actually really naughty. And I just emailed the IVF nurse and I was like, so when would I have to start, prepping myself if I wanted to have a fourth, and she wrote back, and then my husband found the email. He's so mad. So that was the weird thing though. God, it's all coming back to me now. After the third, so after Billy, like when he was about 15, 16 months old, my period just came back, like natural period. So I thought that was a random one. Then it came back 4 weeks later. And then I was literally 4 weeks on the dot. So you started getting regular cycles. Started getting irregular cycles. So then the fourth one, I didn't even have to have any meds. It was just go with your cycle. Like they did a scan to make sure that my lining was thick, and they're like, lining's thick. They were doing blood tests to make sure I actually was, like, my hormones were high enough. They were. So they put that one in, and it took straight up.
Yeah, wow.
And so that was probably, I felt like that was the most natural of them, because I wasn't stimulated at all from anything.
Yeah.
And I laugh a lot about like how you become a professional. Yeah, IVF, when you've done as much as we did. So we'd been to a Christmas party the night before. It was on a Saturday night, and it was like right before Christmas. And they'd said to us, so you can do a transfer on this Sunday morning. It's the last day that we're open before Christmas. So you can come in at 9 a.m. on the Sunday morning. So my husband dropped me at the door. We were hungover. So he had the 3 kids in the car.
Yeah.
He drops me at the door, hungover. I like run in by myself. They put the embryo in. And then I called him, and he's at the coffee shop. I'm like, I'm done now. And he just comes and picks me up. We drove home. And it was like complete non-event.
Yeah.
Such a non-event. And I think back to that first few times we, with Ted, I was getting acupuncture up until I was about 6 months pregnant, I reckon. And like how stressed I was. And it just really further cemented it's a science experiment.
Yeah.
Essentially, about your hormones being right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of not in your control.
No. Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing about IVF in general. It really, you can do things to try and feel like you're in control, but you're not. It is science, and it's the people that are caring for you that really have that control over what happens.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you hear all these, they tell you like you shouldn't do all these things, and you hear people who are pregnant don't even know they're pregnant, partying for like, no, it just happens because people don't realize it. They're fine, their babies are fine. So it's just
100%. And I'm just probably bad. Like, I'm probably not the ideal person, but with the fourth, because I knew she wouldn't have even implanted yet.
Yeah.
I went home and had wine.
Because Christmas.
I was like,
so much
there's
fun.
not even a baby attached to me yet. I'm going to go and have a wine. I'm going to relax.
Yeah.
And it was just so different. I remember I went away in our caravan, and like had these 3 toddlers running around, and I was like, I think I'm pregnant. So I went to the toilets, like the caravan toilet block, did a pregnancy test. My husband wasn't even there. I just sent him a picture, and I was like, what?
So,
Like, it just got so much more relaxed.
Yeah.
But again, we had 3 children. Obviously, the pressure was off. He didn't necessarily want the fourth. So I don't, like, he was very happy when it did work.
Yeah.
And then, she absolutely completed us. So we had boy, girl. We were so complete, so happy. And then, young comes Ronnie.
Yeah, for sure. The only other question I wanted to ask you is, had you had a conversation with your partner to say, because you had 2, I assume you had 2 embryos left at that point. If these 2 don't take, is that kind of, that's it, our family is complete? Or do you have
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We were never going back for a fresh cycle. Like, it was just so much on the body, so much. And we were so happy with your 3. Like, we didn't need any more children to feel like we were done. We would have felt very done if we'd have used those embryos and they didn't work. Yes, 100%. We were not going back. We didn't want to enter back into that. It was too hard. And it was very fresh back then, in our brains, like as hard that was.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So then 5 years down the track, did you want to talk me through what happened for your family?
So then I continued to get regular cycles after Ollie. So she was number 4. I breastfed her till she was about 2.5, because she was like last baby, probably held onto that a bit more. And then I stopped breastfeeding her, and my period came back, and it was like very regular, every 4 weeks. And I clearly remember saying to my husband, we're going to be those people who have that, and he's like, no, we won't. Don't be ridiculous. So we didn't use any contraception. And I remember like the GPs that always say, you want any contraception? And I was like, well, no, we make sure we don't. We're careful, like when I'm going through ovulation and stuff, but we're not on contraception. Yeah, like we don't need to be. This is ridiculous. We've been through 16 transfers of IVF. It does not need to happen. So I was getting really bad acne and I went on the pill because I thought it was like perimenopausal and it was hormonal driven. But then I felt gross on it. I hated the pill. Yeah. So I came off of it after only 10 days being on it and had a bleed, which you do when you come off the pill. And then we went away, him and I, for a weekend 2 days after I'd stopped bleeding, and nice romantic weekend away. And then my period never came back. And I thought that was because I'd been playing around with the pill and then I'd had my period twice in like 2 weeks. And then I was walking around Kmart with Ollie the fourth, and I was like, I feel really sick, like that they're a unique early pregnancy sick. And I was like, there's just no way in the world though. Like we haven't even had sex like when you would need to, but I haven't had a period for ages. So I remember getting the pregnancy test in Kmart and going home and like literally blowing up the pregnancy test. It was so quick. Yeah, which you never had. And you go through, I was like,
A light is lying. Like,
that didn't happen. Yeah. And so, like, again, the world started spinning and I was like, but it was, the weird thing was it was like not a good thing. Yeah, I was devastated. I was just like, no, this cannot be happening. You know, we were so complete. We were so happy. We were starting to like have a bit of a life where we were going bigger holidays because the kids were older. Yeah. Ollie was starting school like the next year and I was like prepared to get back into work a bit more, and we were devastated. And like that's weird when you're someone who's been through so much intervention and IVF to then get pregnant naturally and be like devastated about it. And like I remember just messaging my husband because he was out and saying we have an issue, and he messaged me back and he was like, which one, like which kid, you got the issue? And so then he called me and I was like, you just won't believe what I'm going to tell you. And I told him and he's like, fuck, sort of thing. And I said, but don't worry, because this is not happening. Yeah, like we're not going to go through with this. And I was so firm in that moment, this would not go ahead. Yeah. And then I was like, how can I be in a position of thinking about terminating a pregnancy after everything? And that was a Friday that all happened. So that weekend was just like, I felt horrendous and I was just so confused about it. And I messaged a friend who's an obstetrician, Cara Thompson. I don't, you know her.
She's my OB.
Oh, is she? Yeah. Oh my gosh, she's the best. Yeah. And I just messaged her and I was like, I need to come in and see you. And she was like, no way. And I said, but not like, I need you to help me get rid of this baby. Yeah. And so we went in on, she said, just come in on Monday. We'll do a scan. We'll see where you're at. And then we'll just, you know, you tell me what you want to do. Yeah. And I was like, I know what I want to do. And so we went in and then sure enough, there's a little heartbeat. I was already, I reckon, 8 weeks, which again, when you go through IVF, you know, before you're even pregnant that there's a possibility. So you're like not even 5 weeks pregnant when you know. Yeah. So then I was like having that moment of this proper real pregnancy, like it felt real. Yeah. And I was like, why is this happening now? This needed to happen like 12 years ago. Yeah. And like, it was a hard month because we were also worried about telling the kids. Then we didn't tell them for a while. And then when we did tell them, that was like traumatic for everybody. They were devastated. Okay. They did not want another baby coming in because like it was busy already, like 4 kids in 6 years. It was really busy. And particularly the eldest one, Ted, he was really not happy about it. And we were trying to spin it as a positive. Yeah. And they were just like, no, like, we don't see how this is positive. And I was like, trying to like, we took them to Chin Chin dinner and gave them a card with a scan in it. And they were just like, what part of this is good? Oh, so that was horrible. Like, we were heartbroken because they were so upset. Yeah. But then, you know, we got our heads around it. I hated the pregnancy. Yeah. Like, hated it. I think not wanting to be pregnant, I was 40, being so fearful of what it was going to look like. Yeah. I could not envisage how this was going to look, you know, like with these older 4 and then this new baby. And then I was having a lot of like grief over the embryo we discarded. Yeah. And then we chosen to go ahead with a baby. I just felt like I was, I don't know, letting that embryo down. But then I started to just tell myself, I was like, no, this is the spirit of that embryo coming through, which is like not how I am. I'm not woo woo. But I was like, I'm just going to tell myself that and I'll feel better about it. And in a way, maybe that is, what happened. But then hated the pregnancy just because also like having 4 older children, I was trying to keep up. I was trying so hard not to let it impact us as a family because like we promised them things won't change. This isn't going to change our family as we are. So I was like, I'm not going to change. So we went to Perth for 2 weeks in the summer and did like a road trip. And I was 30 weeks pregnant and it was probably the most tired I've ever felt. And I was trying to be stoic and like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't fine. I was like, terrified of what was about to happen. I couldn't keep up. I was so hot, like everything about it was unenjoyable. But I was like, no, because this isn't about me. This is about them.
Yeah.
But then when Ronnie came, this is like literally the best thing that ever happened. And he has brought this energy that we did not think we needed. But now I'm like, we've been so bored.
Yeah.
He hadn't have come.
Yeah.
The kids are obsessed with him. And that's probably been the most special part is just like them and him.
Yeah.
Like I didn't ever think about what their relationships would be like with him. And there's not been a moment where they've been anything but just like adored him and been grateful for him. So we're lucky because it could have not been like that. I was so worried that they'd resent him because of, him stopping our lives where it had got to. And then it is a bit weird, like, them all being IVF and like from a kind of little unit and they're like him on his own. Yeah. And I'm like, how's that going to look as they get older? But I don't know. It just confused everything because we just thought it was an impossibility. And then,
it would have been a lot to process through. Wow.
Yeah.
And so there's 5 years between your youngest and Ronnie.
Which isn't that much. Ted, who's nearly 13 and Manny, who's 11, they're like a mum and dad. Yeah. But like the funnest mum and dad ever to him. And 5 years really isn't that long. It's only because the first 4 were like so close together in age that it felt like a long time. And also because I turned 40 and I was like, that would mean I was never having a baby. I'd always said, and I'm not having babies after 35. Like, I'm going to have them all before 35 and then I'm moving on. I don't know why I thought that. Like, that was really black and white. Because I'm not a black and white thinker, but I really was quite firm in that. And like I had all at 35 and then I was like, we're done. And then, we were done.
I guess if you have any advice for anyone who is in the trenches of infertility and IVF and they have, they're a year deep and they're just not having any success, do you have any advice for them or anything that you think helped you move through that time?
I think it's such an individual thing. I always felt like asking other people for their stories would make me feel better. And it often didn't. Yeah. Because I was like, yeah, but you're not me. Like, you're so individual. So it's like people understand your infertility. Like, they understand how you feel in it. But it's such a unique thing. You almost just need to be like you, your husband, or your partner, whoever that is, and then your doctor. You need to trust in your doctor. And if you don't, get a second opinion. Like, we went with the same doctor the whole way through. We did at one point, he said to us, I think you should go and talk to a different doctor. And we were like, no, we're happy with you. And he said, no, but we've had a lot of fails now. And I just want you to make sure that I am the right person for you. And we did go and talk to another doctor. And immediately I was like, no, you are the right doctor for us. Yeah. So we really trusted him. And I think you have to trust in their science almost. And I think, like I've said, there is acupuncture. There's all these other things that people tell you, like relax, take a break. But it's such a gut feel. Yes, you might need a break at some point, but like if your gut's telling you, don't be told what to do almost. And I suppose it's just like go with your gut and stick together. You and your partner, you have to stick together. I've seen a couple, but friends, they kind of turn in on each other.
Yeah.
And like that's never going to end well. I think he always understood as well. It was tough on both of us mentally, but like physically for the woman, he's so hard. And so it was always like he was the support role in it. And he was always amazing. But I mean, the advice is just, I don't even want to say like you will get there, but you will get there. Yeah. But also be open to like we looked into so many different things. When we were in the depths of it, thinking it wasn't going to work, wasn't going to happen, we looked into adoption and donations, and we looked into so many different things. Just keep an open mind. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, just lean on your partner, I think.
What do you think going through the whole process took from you, but also gave you?
Yeah, I reckon it makes you so resilient. And my dad actually said this to me just yesterday. Not much that rocks me in terms of in motherhood and day-to-day parenting. I'm pretty just pragmatic about it, and I just take it on, and I don't see much of it as, I'm not a panicker. It's not I don't fall apart at things very easily. And I think that IVF makes you so tough. If you get through it and you come out the other end with children and you just look at them and you're like, yes, this might be a shit day, but you are so strong if you get through IVF. Yeah. And it's like a streak that you can't really understand until you're someone who's been through it. Yeah. Or any infertility, not necessarily IVF, but that want of a baby and the not knowing if you're going to be able to have it, that's a fear you can't describe to someone. It's a fear that is world-ending fear. So then when you do have that baby and you're living in that world of having those children, it's yeah, but nothing will ever feel like that fear. In fact, there is only one fear that is as bad. And with our third, we went through an awful process of not knowing if he had a genetic disorder that was going to mean he potentially, would die before he was 10. And we had a 2-day period where he'd be tested and we didn't know what his future was going to look like. I'd say that's the only other feeling I've had that's close to that fear of not knowing if you're going to be able to have your own children one day. Those 2 days, they were horrendous. They were worse. Yeah. But that's the only thing that has compared for me to those 2 years of IVF and not knowing. So I think as a person, it makes you just so tough. Yeah. And also it's a community. There is a community of people that get it. Yeah. And I know this is so bad, but when people talk about their struggle to get pregnant and it took them, a couple of months, and so they kind of get it, you're like, no, you don't. Yes, it took you a few months, and then you got there. You had a few months where you were disappointed, your period, but you don't get it though. You just don't. But yeah, it definitely makes you a very tough cookie. Yeah, for sure.
And then just finally, do you have any advice for someone who may be unexpectedly pregnant and, going through the throes of that and not sure what to do or carrying any kind of guilt? Do you have any advice for them?
I think just sit in that. It's all right to feel like that. It's all right to feel like you don't want a pregnancy. Not every pregnancy is necessarily a positive thing. And for me at the beginning, it was not positive. And I beat myself up because I was I know how many people would do anything to have this pregnancy. And here I am not wanting it. And I felt so wrong for not being happy about it. Yeah. But then the more I thought about it, and after speaking to Cara, and she's so good at just being a spade's a spade. She's yeah, but you do feel shit about it. That's all right. Feel shit about it. Yeah. And it's all right to not feel positive about it. And I am so, so pro-choice. If you are not in a position to have a baby, don't have that baby. I'm so pro that. And it felt very real for me initially that we were going to terminate that pregnancy. We didn't. And I cannot imagine how I would feel today if we had have done. But that's not even something I can think about because we didn't, Yeah. But I think if it's something that's really not going to fit into your life and 100% go with what's going to suit your family. We did go ahead and it's been absolutely amazing. And I'm also a big believer in you make it work. If you're going to go ahead and, it's not going to not work out. And it has worked out so perfectly and beautifully. But in saying that, I'm so tired all the time. Mac and cheese is so hard. It's really hard.
My biggest question for you is what car do you drive?
A van. Yeah. A huge van. Yeah. Those airport shapes of van. Yeah. I actually drive on a phone. Makes sense. And I had the lunchbox out yesterday, and because he goes to family daycare on a Tuesday, so there's 5 lunchboxes. And they're all unique. One likes this, one likes that, one won't eat this, one. So they're customized lunch boxes. And it takes me, I don't know, I can't get my head into it. So I'm like all over the place. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Nobody should be making 5 lunch boxes. Often I look at my life and I'm like, how did it come to this?
Yeah.
But also like, I'm so lucky. I would not change it. And I can see as they're going to get older, it's going to be so fun.
Yeah, well, how amazing to have such a big family as time goes on.
Yeah. Holidays are a whole new thing though. You can't get places that sleep 7 people. Like hotels, you need 3 hotel rooms. Everything definitely gets very expensive. So
Yes, I can go factor that in. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. And you have had an amazing journey. And yeah, super special that we could share this today. So thank you. This has been The Space Between Two Lines. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and register on our website to share your story. The link is in the bio. Until next time.